Hi, my name is John Light, and I've spent over 20 years working throughout all corners of the recruiting world. Our podcast, Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool, is a resource to help you stay afloat and get ahead of your competition. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool. I'm your host, John Light, CEO, President of Sabretooth Recruiting, Inc. And today I have, I think, one of my more fascinating guests from a personal life story perspective that I've had in a while, Norma Tirado, who's also the CHRO of Access Community Health Network up in Chicago. Norma, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me, John. It's just really good to know that you think I'm exciting and fun. So I can't wait to see where this takes us.
I would love to just I could spend this entire time having you just tell me more about how a person goes from like CHRO to CIO to CTO to CHRO to chief people. I mean, you've had this fascinating set of career transitions. And you know, in our podcast, the thesis, the theme, that kind of the thread that goes through it all is this idea of, hey, let's talk about talent. Let's talk about talent acquisition, talent management, talent retention, how talent has impacted your career path, how other people have impacted you career path wise, personal stories and whatnot. But I found yours fascinating. Number one, because we met, in full disclosure, through a board member at Sabretooth
Yes.
that you play golf with. But then somehow you have time for that after, wearing multiple C-suite hats for organizations. And I find it fascinating how a person can do that. Yeah, I have another board member who's a CHRO, very, very sharp, high energy, just almost kinetic in a way. And what got my attention when I first met her is she didn't describe herself as a CHRO per se, but as a business professional first. And it kind of opened my mind up. Well, okay, here's somebody with the right mindset who could become other C-suite roles and step in other executive functions. And I was hoping that we could talk about that some, Norma, and about what moved you and how those opportunities not only gave you a chance to expand and how they resonate with you, but the impact they've had on you and on the talent around you, because those are different people that you also have to work with. I mean, working with IT is a world of difference from working with HR, which is different from finance, which is different from, whoever's doing what out in the field. So that's my long-winded saying is like, tell me more.
I would pick one word. I would say flexibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also, I heard this this TED talk that this young woman described herself as a multi-potentialite, right? Somebody who has multiple interests,
Mm-hmm.
Multiple sets of skills that can be used in many different ways. And I have been fortunate to have some leaders and mentors that I worked with that have seen potential in me beyond what would be a typical human resource leader.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can summarize what one CEO put to me in very simple words, it's all about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So in all of these jobs, the key part of these jobs is being able to build relationships with people and get them to work at their maximum potential. So yes, HR people may be different from IT people, but at the end of the day, they want to be seen as human beings. They want to know that you're interested in them. They want to know that you want to grow, help them grow. And they want to know that you're acting in not just the best interest of the organization, but their best interest as well. So leading, in essence, doesn't have to be that different.
Mm-hmm.
If you focus on caring about the person and then caring about meeting the objectives of the organization and bringing those two things together. So to me, it wasn't as difficult as a transition as you would expect.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people, if you're going to transition and be a CIO or CTO, then you've got to know the latest and greatest about technology and all this other stuff. And I've always maintained more important than that is knowing the right questions to ask, knowing who to bring in to talk to for the right answers or the right questions sometimes. But I think a lot of times in a career path, we overemphasize technical skills and underemphasize human skills, such as communication and that sort of thing, but also having the ability to get everyone aligned in the same direction. Not that they're monolithic, not that they're I mean, if you watch a flock of birds or a school of fish, if the school's going one way or the birds are all going one way and half a dozen decide to do a right turn and to slow down to brake check the bird behind them, so to speak, it creates issues. But it doesn't mean that the birds aren't different or have different interests. They all need alignment. And I fall back into that alignment quite a bit because aligned interests can make strange bedfellows, I suppose, in the sense that I wouldn't normally put things together, but now I do because, look, we're heading towards the same or similar goal.
Yeah, I think alignment is critically important. And I think in the book Good to Great, Jim Collins said that it's not, a lot of people say, I'm going to decide where I'm going and then I'm going to choose the people. But he turned that around and he says, no, I'm going to choose the people. And then they will go with me wherever I decide to go, because the right people will be flexible enough and willing and able and willing to shift. I think also as a leader of people with expertise outside of perhaps your area of expertise, like I've had, you have to be comfortable with working with people that are more intelligent than you or know more about a certain topic than you do, and then giving them the power and the authority to make decisions without always having to consult with you, right? As long as they know that the direction that you're headed. So you need to be able to trust people. I was really surprised, John, after I got named CIO for the first time. I decided I'm going to go to a CIO boot camp and I'm going to learn everything I need to know about technology so that I can be a really good CIO. When I got there, I was surprised to see that 90% of the content was about leadership. 90% of the content was about how to lead people, how to lead change. It wasn't about the latest and greatest technology, because you're going to depend on the people that are working with you to learn about the greatest or educate you about the latest and the greatest technology. And then you have to trust. And there's so much knowledge, and not just in IT, but there's so much knowledge out there in every field right now that we as leaders can't possibly know everything.
Right.
We can't have the answers to everything. What we should have, like you said earlier, is the questions to everything. Is we should know what questions to ask. And we should elevate our curiosity to a new level. And if we do that, we'll be able to get alignment from our teams.
You just hit one of my hot button issues when I prep a candidate for an interview. I don't give them answers, but I talk to them about how to structure answers, because I don't like candidates meandering in an interview. I don't like them oversharing. I like them, let's get right on target and get right to it, and put the interviewer in a position of reflecting your curiosity, wanting to know more about you, giving you permission to data dump on them or to offer solutions, whatever it might be. But you touch on this thing of curiosity, and we talked about the right questions to ask. I wonder sometimes if there's some shortchanging that has gone on with generations of people in business, generations of people coming through college or even high school, and they're not taught to anything like, for example, the Socratic method, and diving in with questions and truly being curious, not being married to what the final answer is, but being married to the process, so when you get to the final answer, you can have confidence in it. And I wonder sometimes if the flexibility you talk about, a lot of that is because you're not married to a predetermined result, but you are engaged with getting to the right result in a way that promotes confidence. That, hey,
Yeah,
I think we've been through a rigorous process, and where we're at, this makes sense.
I agree with that. I think that, again, staying with the topic that as leaders, we're supposed to be the people who ask the questions rather than the ones who answer the questions, which is a shift, right? A lot of us get put into leadership positions and we feel the pressure to have the answers to everything. But really, we should just have the questions. And I think if you're able to do that, then you can help your team members become more curious, right? And they'll start asking better questions as well. I love the concept of not necessarily asking more questions, but asking better questions, right? That are going to elicit conversation and engagement. And I like what you said about not being married to a final solution. One of the things that I had to learn as a leader was to get comfortable with the fact that there are many ways to get to the same answer, right? There are many ways. There could be multiple options too. And I may think of one or two options, but the team is going to come up with 5 or 10 or 13. And they're going to be, because we're working together, they're going to be better than what a single person can come up with in terms of a solution. So engaging the team by asking questions, I think it's absolutely key to good leadership these days. And, there's just so much access to information today, easy to get to, that I think we have to continue to engage people in bringing solutions to the table that may be things different than what we may think, especially in areas where you're not an expert on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't it crazy? Is because your background, that is your actual bookshelves. Okay, those are real. For anybody watching this on YouTube or any other medium, that's not a backdrop. I mean, you can't see mine; they're behind my computer. But think about how long it would take you to go through those to find information versus, we've got search engines and AI now. It's mind baffling to me, but the other key part, I think, of being an executive and being able to do a career transition from one functional area to another is not just asking the right questions. And it's not really crowdsourcing solutions or answers per se, but it's relying on the expertise and the people that you've brought with you or that you inherited or whatever. But it's also the ability to make decisions. And, there's this line in there, Norma, that when I was in college, I had a professor for a summer school class. It was advanced accounting. I'm bald. I was an accountant. I left too late. I should have stayed. My hair probably would have stayed. But Dr. Larry Wood, I'll never forget the man. He passed away the following semester. I mean, it broke my heart. I just thought he was one of the most amiable and brightest people I met, because he didn't just look at an accounting problem. I don't think we worked an accounting problem one in that summer school class over those weeks. But we had to come in and write an essay, a brief, like a synopsis, and break down on articles every day in the Wall Street Journal or in the New York Times business section or whatever it might be. So he's getting us to think through problems. And I go into his office one time and I was chatting with him, and he recommended a book to me that he said, if you read the first 8 chapters, you'll have an equivalent of a master's degree in economics. And I'm like, $9.99, that is a cheap education. So I went and got a copy of the book. And it took me a while to get through it because I found it to be very dense. It's called The Road to Serfdom. It was written by Frederick Hayek. But one of the things that Hayek puts out there is that when it comes to determining prices, when you have central command authority determining prices, it's horribly inefficient versus letting individuals do it. But the total sum, if you will, of the individual's decisions will actually drive pricing, because that's what your actual demand is at a certain price. And you can adjust the price up and down to increase volume. And you look at it and you go, well, that makes sense. But you hear governments all the time, like executive leaders, dictating the outcome before going through the process. And with business, I think it's critical that, yes, an executive has to be that final authority. Someone's got to make a decision. I can't sit there with 19 different solutions and do them all at once because my resource may dictate that we can do 2. Okay, someone's got to pull the trigger on that. But the process to get there, it's very much like the old Eisenhower saying, plans are useless, but planning is essential. It's like getting all this input. It's essential to get to where you're going to go. And I think I think it would be a fascinating study on executive decision making. And is it being pushed from the top, or is it really taking in the holistic view of all the individuals involved with their own thoughts and then paring it down to what makes the most sense for the organization and the people?
But I think it depends on where you start, right? Because if you already know what you want to do and how you want to do it, don't go to your team and pretend you're asking them to give you input. You're just trying to drive them to that solution. And if that's what you want to do, just be open and honest with them and say, here's what I want to do. Here's how I want to do it. Help me get there, right? That's different. But if you want to find different solutions that could be better than what you thought of, then you ask the question, how can we get here? And it's a matter of knowing what the objective is, right? And helping the team get you to that objective. So I want to improve the culture of the organization. All right. I have a model for that. I have a model that's extremely prescriptive, but it may not fit every organization, right? So I need to go to the organization and learn about the organization and learn about the people and learn about what's important to the customers of that organization before I try to say, this is the model that's going to work for this particular organization.
Right.
This is the culture that we need to get to where we want to go. So if you know the answer, don't ask the question, right? But if you are looking for better answers, then ask the questions.
Oh, I love the way you say that. Thank you very much, because I think that's the thing. Often when we think we have the answer, we don't. Because it's so hard to see everything as just one mind.
Yeah. And it's, I think, again, a lot of eyes are going to see more than your 2 eyes and your experience. Everything we do, everything we get to is based on our own experiences. So imagine if you can take the collective experiences of that many more people into account when making a decision. And at some point in time, you have to make the decision, right?
And somebody's got to own it.
You cannot analyze and ask forever. At some point in time, you have to say, okay, now that we have all this information, we have to make a decision. And that's when, that's where the buck stops, right? And that's when you have to pull the trigger. But no, I think it's important to know whether you truly, truly want their input or whether you know where you're going and you just want them to help you get there.
It's kind of a sincerity factor, right? Are you asking me because you're going through it prescriptively, for example, or because it's rote, or because that's what my boss demands of me, is that I interface with you and ask you if you can assist with this or what your thoughts are? Or is it sincere? Hey, maybe you got something here that I don't see. I need to know. So let's talk, let's share, let's formulate.
I've been at meetings, for example, where everybody comes with an idea of what we're supposed to accomplish. And you know what? A lot of people love to name drop, right?
Right.
The CEO said this is what they want, rather than, hey, this is the idea that I want to bring to the table, or this is my agenda. And I think that we need to really kind of work through a lot of that garbage at times to get people to sincerely open up and say, this is what I think, rather than this is what I think my leader wants. And so I'm going to say this, or I'm going to bring this to the table. I don't know if I'm clear on that, but to me, at times, those are the most frustrating meetings to go to where people don't come to the table to express or bring their own expertise, but that they want to use influence. Maybe the CEO told me that this is what he wants or she wants, rather than, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is the direction that I think we're going. I think I just went on a tangent, maybe based on a meeting I had earlier today, but
I think you hit on something important. And
you may have to edit this.
No, I don't know that it needs to be edited at all, because I counsel people all the time. First thing I tell them when I do an interview prep is be yourself. Do not put a facade up to be what you think that interviewer wants, because you can't maintain that on the job. And the problem we run into, I think, is twofold. I think there's multiple directions that we have to approach it. Number one, an executive team, for example, that has a my way or a highway disposition and that sort of thing, that's not a space where people perhaps feel confident that if they let their thoughts be known, that there won't be negative consequences. And there's a big difference between everybody putting their ideas on the table, the team sorting it out. And you know what? If my idea is not one of the ones that's been accepted, I need to have the humility to acquiesce and pull the wagon in the same direction as everyone else. On the flip side of that, you got to have be magnanimous. Is that the right word? That if it is my idea is accepted, I'm not there to browbeat you with it. I want to pull the wagon in the same direction and let's go. And I think, we underestimate the impact of personality and ego in meetings, right? So suppose someone puts an idea on the table. Okay. Somebody says, I don't agree. Here's why. Does our ego prevent us from accepting a criticism without personalizing it? Do we separate that from our identity, so to speak? On the flip side, does that other person separate their criticism from their disposition toward me? There's a lot of this interpersonal stuff. But one of the things I'm afraid of, and Norma, you may have thoughts on this, is that not only are we not teaching young people to think and to use stuff like the Socratic method and other tactics and techniques, but are we teaching people to not personalize everything? Because I look at you and I listen to you and I hear the smile and the vibrance and the energy. I can hear that. I don't have to see it. I know it's there. But I also know if I tell you, I see that book in the background, oh, that's a terrible book, you shouldn't read it. You're going to laugh. You're not going to take it personally. You're going to be like, well, that's your opinion. I could probably see why I can't see anything but that.
I may think it's a terrible book too, but I still read it, right?
And there's nothing wrong with that. We can disagree and we can have fun, but in the context of we can learn about it.
Yeah, I think the main thing here is to teach people how to disagree respectfully, right? There is a scene, I don't know if you like movies.
Sometimes.
There is a scene on one of my favorite movies, Dances with Wolves. I don't know if you've seen that.
More than once.
It's an old movie. So that scene when they're under the tipi and they are discussing what are they going to do about this man that just showed up, this white man that just showed up. And the way they speak to each other, basically, first you acknowledge what the other person says and you give them credit for the way, I understand why you see it this way. Let me now share the way I see it. That way of conversing, that yes and approach rather than the yes but approach, I think it's really important. I used to, in one of the organizations that I worked with, John, we did an exercise with our new hires all the time to teach them how to think yes and rather than yes but. How do you embrace somebody's idea and build on it rather than take it down, right? Put it down. And I think that's important because it's hard to separate. I mean, again, one of my favorite books is Cy Wakeman's No Ego, right? How to take drama away from the workplace. But it's there, right? So if it's there, how do we do it respectfully, right? How do I say to you, John, I can understand why you think that's not a very good book. Let me tell you what I found in that book that I found useful. And then that doesn't put you down. That doesn't say you're wrong and I'm right. It creates an environment we can both be right, and we can maybe even come up with something better. If you didn't like that book, here, I have another one that you may want to try that may be more to your liking. So how do we disagree respectfully, so that it's not a matter of you not taking it personally, but you're also going to do it in a way that puts people's defenses down. Yeah. If we start arguing about it and start name calling each other, that's just not going to work, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I would circle back to something you mentioned earlier, and that's trust.
For sure.
I mean, if you're going to be a leader, and especially if you're going to step into a situation where you're going from one function like you did from human resources to information technology or technology period, or if you went to sales, or if you went to compliance, or wherever, there's a huge trust factor, and it's bi-directional at a minimum, right? And how do you deal with that if people are at loggerheads, if they're at odds with one another? I think that, it's funny because I didn't know where this conversation was going to go. So this is all very interesting. I love the whole psychological interaction piece of it. But I think you got to extend some trust to people without the expectation that they're going to right away extend trust to you.
I think in most leadership positions, that's absolutely the case. As much as you'd like to think that people are going to trust you right off the bat, no, not necessarily. It depends on what experience they have had in the past. But you do extend trust to people until they give you a reason not to. But I got to tell you a story. You like stories, John. Yeah. I had a CEO. Okay, I worked in this organization, and there was another person on the team and I that we just didn't see eye to eye. And we were just not doing a very good job communicating with each other. And you know what the CEO did? He sent us to a conference together and told us we had to drive in the same car 5 hours to a conference, 5 hours there and 5 hours back.
Okay.
And what we found out is we had more in common than different. That we were approaching things differently, but we were trying to get to the same place. And it absolutely did wonders for our relationship. Did we become best friends? No, we didn't become best friends, but we became aligned, which I think is what you were talking about before. Our personalities were not necessarily going to allow us to, go out and I'm a pretty relatable person, but it just wasn't going to work. But we could work better together because on our way there, 5 hours and 5 hours back, we learned more about each other than work, right?
Yeah.
We learn more about who we are as human beings. And I think leaders need to do more of that with their people. They need to know who their people are inside and outside of work so that they can maximize their potential.
So they got to be willing to take the risk of vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And they have to be, and I think maybe this is tougher. You have to be willing to invest the time in people that may or may not be there a year or 10 years down the road or wherever it may be. And I've noticed a lot of times people won't invest time and effort into other people. And I think it's, at my age, I'm Gen X, me saying this, I'm sure it'll go in one ear and out the other for a lot of people. But I think technology has removed a lot of that. This rush to, we can interact on social media versus what we're doing, or versus having a conversation face-to-face at a coffee shop. I think water cooler talk is important. Not gossip, not tearing people down, but to your point, getting to know that this person that maybe I like, dislike, doesn't matter, they're another human being. And I may agree or disagree with them or vice versa, but as another human being, we're equals.
Yeah, I think if you know what's important to people, you can help them connect that to whatever the purpose of the organization is, right? Or whatever you're trying to accomplish as a group or as a team. But if you don't know what's important to people, it's hard to make those connections. And I've argued with my leaders a lot about, I don't like goals that are, we all like to have SMART goals, but I say I want SMART goals with an emotional connection to the people that have to meet those goals.
Interesting.
Because it is the mind may do the work, but it's the heart that's going to get you to want to do the work. And not just do the work, but do it the best way possible. So when we, for example, when I was a CIO and we implemented an electronic medical records, we, of course, had the goal of doing it on time and under budget. And okay, we know we have to do that. But our biggest goal was to save lives. To save lives, to put in place a system that's going to save lives of the people in our community. That, guess who that includes? It includes my sister, my brother, my mother, my kids. Now, installing that electronic medical record, it's a lot bigger than getting it done on time and on budget.
You mean the why? The why ended up being bigger than anyone's ego, right? And it's worthy.
It's a lot. Yes.
Yeah.
And most goals, when you tell people we got to do this because we got to save money. Okay. That doesn't maybe resonate as much with people as if we save money, we can keep more people employed and we can pay you better and we can give your family a more secure future. Those are the types of things that are going to connect emotionally with people, not, we got to save, $3 billion, whatever.
Although there's nothing wrong with saving $3 billion.
There isn't. I'm not saying that shouldn't be done. That is important. But what is that connection that's going to motivate people to want to save that kind of money?
As you were talking, it brought to mind a quote, and for the life of me, I couldn't tell you who said it, and I have to paraphrase. But it's basically, if you want to have people sail across the ocean, you don't need to teach them to chop trees and build ships. You need to teach them to yearn for the open sea, to have that powerful why. Because 80% of the people, and this includes you and I mean, I don't know if we're in the 80 or the 20, but 80% of people out there have to have some kind of motivation, carrot, stick, why, whatever it is. And it has to be top of mind to get the best out of them. 20% of the people have a natural drive. I remember talking to a high level college athlete, soccer player, which is fabulous. And sometimes challenged me to talk about this because I don't always know how to phrase it. This is my first wife. She passed away from cancer years later.
Sorry.
It went through a lot. I appreciate it. It's life, right? But she always said, if she had been dependent on just being an individual athlete when it came to training, she wouldn't have gotten very far. But she needed a coach and she needed the team to work with and other people she wanted to play with and the excitement of being on the field in a game. And she was phenomenal athlete.
Yeah.
But if you asked her, hey, are you going for a run this evening? You get this look like, are you out of your mind? But if you would have said, hey, are you going to go train, with the team? Are you going to hit the gym with the team? It's like, boom, where have you been? Well, I've been training, And a lot of people function that way. There's nothing wrong with it. But there are a few people out there that are just driven. Anything they do, whatever it is, they're going to blow it up. They're going to do great. But let's face it, most of the people who work in organizations are in the 80%. And we need to understand within ourselves and with them that all these factors we've talked about are true. But I think the biggest is if we can get everybody working for something bigger than ourselves, we've got a chance to really do something special. And
I think that's why it's important for people to understand the why, like you said, and it's important to find a purpose that is bigger than ourselves. And most people, my experience, John, has been that, and I think I have a really good talent for finding talent or finding the gifts that people have that are really specific, and then growing that so they can excel. My experience has been that most people have come back to me and said, I never thought I could get this, I could do this. And here I am. I exceeded my expectations, and I exceeded your expectations, and I exceeded the organization's expectations. But you have to find, what is it? What is it that is so important to them that they're going to go out there and bring the best versions of themselves to work every day. And I had the opportunity one time in my life to be able to handpick every single individual on one of my teams. And it was probably the best experience that I've had. And the people wanted to be there so bad. We made it so attractive to be there. And it wasn't necessarily because of money. Again, it was because of what we were trying to accomplish that became a purpose that was going to impact the community and the organization in ways that we hadn't seen before. So finding that why, finding that purpose, finding what's important to people at a human level is critically important. We cannot ignore it.
Norma, I'm going to wrap up with that because I think that's profound, insightful, and frankly, I think it's something that people need to pay more attention to, the human side of things, because we've got a lot more similarities than differences. There's, it's funny in an ironic, sarcastic, cynical sort of way, I suppose, that, we have so much dysfunction in corporate America and in other places that's not necessarily driven by whether we can accomplish something or not. It's because we can't get people on the same page. And look, not everybody is the right fit for every organization, and not every organization is the right fit for everybody. There are people who are going to excel working for goodwill. I know a lady who went from being an EA at a consulting firm to being an EA to the CEO at Goodwill. She worked more. I think she got paid less. She was so much happier. And it was fantastic to see, even from the outside looking in. And I think we all got to find our niche, and hopefully we get there.
Yeah. And if I may give you one more thing to think about. And I know I have a lot of books in my background, but some of the books that I cherish most of all are absolutely children's books that have incredible wisdom for us adults to think about. And one of those is a series of book called What You Do Matters. So check that one out.
Okay.
It has 3 books. What do you do with an idea? What do you do with a problem? And what do you do with a chance? I absolutely want all my team members to read those, because it just reminds us again about that human level of what do you do when you face something that you are not used to, or you have an idea in your head that you can't get out of your head, or somebody gives you an opportunity to accomplish something. I think we have to go back and just remember how we were when we were like 3 years old.
Yeah, in the land of giants, for sure. And getting things out sometimes is more of a challenge. Well, it stays a challenge, but I think it'd be great. I wrote it down, so I'll be looking it up. And Norma, thanks so much for sharing so much and covering all this territory today.
This was fun, John. Thanks for having me. And thanks to Brenda for recommending me.
Well, the next thing we have to do is have a little campfire circle and talk about golf games and handicaps, because I've got another board member who also loves to play. So I don't know. Maybe there needs to be a little threesome.
Maybe you just need to come to Perry Park.
Maybe there needs to be a little fun time for sure coming up. But Norma, thanks so much again. And you and I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Sounds great.
You've been listening to Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool. This podcast is sponsored by Sabretooth. Sabretooth improves the quality of hire and speeds up the time to fill specialized machine learning, data engineering, data science, and developer roles, stretching tech recruiting budgets further by bringing the precision of retained search and the speed of contingent search to the market in one complete solution. Find out more at sbr2th.com and follow me, John Light, on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.